Hey everybody, Jen Hatmaker here, your very, very happy host of the For the Love podcast. Hey, we're bringing you something pretty special today. This is a conversation that stayed with me since the day I recorded it. I don't know if you ever just walk away from a conversation and just keep thinking, gosh, I needed that. And this was one like that for me. So we're revisiting my conversation with Elise Loehnen. She's one of the people that I feel so glad and lucky and grateful has come into my orbit, that I know her, that I like her so much. Elise is the author of On Our Best Behavior, The 7 Deadly Sins and the Price Women Pay to Be Good. Wow, Jen, I wonder why you wanted this conversation to be repeated. So this book blew my mind. Elise dives into how patriarchy doesn't just shape our systems, of course, but it's inside of us. Like, we carry it around. It teaches women to strive, for goodness, while men are trained for power. Elise helps us see how those old scripts are still quietly running in the background of our daily lives. God, they sure are. We talk about everything from motherhood to anger to what it means to unlearn the patterns that have kept us small and to imagine just a freer and truer way of being, not just for us, but for the generations after us. So whether you caught this one the first time or you're hearing it fresh, lucky you, this is one of the most insightful, hopeful conversations we've had on this show. So let's jump back into it. Here's my talk with the absolutely wonderful Elise Loehnen. Well, Elise, hi, and welcome to the show. And as we were just saying, it's about time.
It is. It's about time.
Mm-hmm. Welcome.
I truly love everything that you do, Jen. And
Thank you.
I stalk your Instagram because you always make me laugh.
We have to laugh. I mean, what else can we possibly do in this insane life?
No.
Everything is so mad right now. It's just madness.
It is. It truly is.
It's madness. At some point this morning, I have this habit, and I think it's terrible, and I think I need to flag it for reform. But I have this habit of, I get up, I like to have this calm morning. So first of all, you'll see where the train leaves the tracks here in about 1 second. I like to have a calm morning. I like to get centered. I like to make my bed. I like to do my coffee. I put on the music. I do a thing. And then to add to all my lovely practices to become centered and grounded for the day, I watch the news. Why? Why do I do it? I turn it on, and then all the good feelings go away. So, I had to turn it off this morning. I was like, Jen, you cannot sit here all day and just listen to a live audio of the Supreme Court hearing. You just can't do it. You just need to do something else. And so I am delighted to be spending a much better hour with you. Thanks for being here. For my listening community who's new to you, they're maybe not familiar with your work, and I've given your credentials, so I have introduced you with all the aplomb that you deserve. But can you just talk a little bit about this is me, and this is where I am, and this is who belongs to me, and this is kind of my deal.
Okay. Yes. Happy to.
Yeah.
I'm a mother of 2 young boys. I'm a writer and editor. I spent the formative years of my career working in magazines and really learning how to edit, which I'm very grateful to have that skill now. And then I was the chief content officer of Goop for a long time, 7 years, which was a wild ride, Jen. And yeah, Netflix shows and podcasts. And since 2020, I've been on my own, writing a newsletter, hosting a podcast called Pulling the Thread, interested in many of the same things as you. And then I've ghostwritten 12 books, which is that's a whole thing. But I finally wrote my own book called On Our Best Behavior, which is about the 7 deadly sins and the way that they are this punch card of goodness for women, the way women are programmed for goodness and men are programmed for power, and how insidious that becomes because and for context, my father's Jewish. My mom would call herself a recovering Catholic, but I grew up in a pretty secular way at home in Montana and have become a deeply spiritual person, though unaffiliated. And which I think allowed me to sort of approach some of these texts and say, wait, okay, I thought aren't we all inherently good? I thought that was something that was granted. Why is this something that's so adjudicated, right, by other people? And where did this start and where did it come from? And why do men not feel prescribed the same values? Why is this a feminine concept? So that was the beginning of that inquiry. And similar to you, how do I hold something that's very valuable to central to me close while trying to get to a truer version? It's hard, right?
Oh God.
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to be the work of our adult lives. And I just, when I think I've plowed up some new ground and claimed some new territory, well, I feel differently about that next year, or my experience broadens out, or my perspective is challenged, and I go, maybe that's true too. It's good work though. I find that noble work. And once upon a time, I grew up evangelical, and so we prized certainty. That was our favorite.
Certainty is so comfortable.
Oh, I loved it. God, I really did. I absolutely loved it. Life was so much simpler then. And I'm a person who I like to know the guardrails. And so what has more guardrails than evangelicalism? Nothing. It's all guardrails. And so this sort of spiritual quest and inquiry that you and I are both on would have startled me beyond all comprehension 20 years ago for sure. But now I find it noble and meaningful. And I hold everything that I think very loosely, very, just the loosest hands. This is what I think I know now. So maybe me in 5 years will be in a different place. I am not sure, but I really appreciate the sense of curiosity that you bring to your work. And I love the questions you were asking at the beginning of this project. I wonder why this is directed largely at women and what is this about? So let's just start there. And by the way, first of all, thank you for being willing to talk. The book's been out about a year, right? Last May. Thank you for being willing to talk about your book that's a year old.
Oh my God, my pleasure. I'm so happy that it's had a life, mainly passed from woman to woman. The greatest joy, right?
It is. And frankly, I wish that your book didn't have such a reliable shelf life. I would love it if women started reading it and going, I don't understand this at all. This isn't the context in which I live. I don't have these boundaries. I don't have these limits.
What are you talking about?
What's this girl going on about? But we are not yet there. So can we just start kind of at the top of on our best behavior? I'd love to hear, just as a fellow creative who loves literary structure, give me the structures. I love them. Give me the bones. I'll hang the meat on it, but I love the bones. So how did you settle on your entry point, which is the 7 deadly sins? I'd just love to hear how this all came
together. So there were many, I can tell 5 versions of the story because in a really, I think, quite magical or mystical way, everything that I was interested in landed in this book. I started with a bunch of questions, having written so many books for other people, understanding how intense the process is, understanding how critical structure is, and in order to bring a reader through material, particularly if you're going to try and write a book that's a book and not just an article extended over 10 chapters. And to make it fun and accessible. And I'm very interested too in this sort of no man's land which I think is underserved in the market, which is, I think a lot of women love fiction. I love fiction too. And don't want to read like an academic nonfiction book. So I was like, how do I land a book that will be unappealing to academics, or they can snub their noses at it, but is incredibly researched and tight, but fun? I mean, the materials, you could say it's not fun.
It's so fun. It's such a joyride.
But
yeah, but those were, you're threading a tight needle there.
A tight needle. Yeah. But and I think that's how you find a book that people are like, oh, I did this, I read this. And so, and I wanted to answer a really big question. And the big question I had for myself, to be perfectly candid, Jen, was, this is after 2016. We understand what sort of I hate being sort of in the block of white women, but like what's going on with white women, and why do we vote against our interests, and what's happening here? Why are we so protective of the patriarchy, including a man who's, rapist, convicted, I think at this point, right? I think yeah. So what's happening? I'm just curious about the consciousness there. And then what I also wanted to understand in myself was I could look out and see there were a lot of wonderful men in my life. My husband's a feminist. My father's really progressive, like feminist person. I've had amazing bosses who have advocated for me and taught me how to, get more money out of them. And so I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like the way that we're as a culture oriented towards like, it's the men and it's the men. And yes, there are like many nefarious men amongst us, but I was like, this is way too simple, the way that we're looking at this. And I can recognize in myself that this system of patriarchy is not about a person. It's not like a man behind a curtain making this all happen. This is an old, but not inevitable, as I came to understand, system that's in me, and I am policing myself according to these ideas, and I'm policing other women. And I say things like, I just expect more from her, and women are sort of better than this, and yada, yada. I mean, we all know those scripts, but the reality is I'm way harder on other women than I am on men. And what is that? Like, I just wanted to be honest with myself. And understand in what ways am I perpetuating this system in the name of sisterhood, right? And I'm always interested in any personal responsibility. So that was one thing, was like, what's happening here? Because, and in talking to friends, it's like, we never want to say it because it works against our narrative. But talking to friends, it's like the people that they felt betrayed by often, particularly in work and social contexts, the people that they felt hurt by were largely other women. And it's not like, we don't like talking about it because it's not the chapter that we're trying to sort of write right now. And so I started the book thinking, like, is it envy? In part because Lori Gottlieb had said to me, I tell clients, or she wrote about this, and maybe you should talk to someone. I tell clients to pay attention to their envy because it shows them what they want. And I asked her if it was gendered, and she said, I hadn't really thought about it, but probably because women are a lot more anxious about qualities that they consider bad. And so the instinct, of course, is to project it and deprecate whoever is making you feel bad, right? So this is, I just don't like her. She rubs me the wrong way. Who does she think she is? What we're really saying is, like, I would never allow myself to do that. I would never, and to me, that felt like sort of the crux of it is that this woman has something we want or is doing something we want. And instead of saying, oh, I can let this happen, I can let this envy come up and say, oh, this is like, something's knocking on my soul, something's saying, pay attention, like you want this, let's do this. This might be your who you are or who you're supposed to be. Our instinct is to be like, she's the worst. Somehow that since she has it, I can't have it too. And so that was the beginning, was like, is that what's happening? Is this why women are self-restricting and then restricting each other? It's like, well, you can't have it if I can't have it. And then, so I started with envy, and then I was like, where did envy come from? And was like, oh, it was one of those 7 deadly sins. Like, what are they? I saw the movie, where are they in the Bible? And then I realized, and this is where all my interests converge, because I'm a huge Mary Magdalene fan. I realized that they weren't in the Bible. They came out of the Egyptian desert in the 4th century at the hands of this monk Evagrius Ponticus, who's, I know you're an Enneagram, also credited as an early father of the Enneagram. And they were these like distracting thoughts. That's how they were first conceived. And then it wasn't until 590 that Pope Gregory said, I don't have to tell you this, but in the New Testament, Mary Magdalene is the one who's referred to as the one from whom Jesus cast 7 demons, but it's never said what they are. And people are like, I think he was balancing her chakras, which I like that. But in 590, Pope Gregory said, these are the 7 vices. They are the same demons that he cast out of Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene is the woman who anoints Jesus's feet with her hair, different woman, but no bother. And that woman is the penitent prostitute. And that's where it all began. And then she wore that reputation until I think the 80s. And then 2016 became the apostle to the apostles. But that's where it started, this punch card of goodness.
That's daunting.
I know.
It's a daunting place to start, and probably surprising. Didn't know you're going to be tugging that ancient thread, literally.
Yeah, I did not expect that when I pitched this book. I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. Like, people know these. And then I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize what I was walking into.
I want to stay up here at the top of the funnel for another minute, because you mentioned this a minute ago. And this is a bit of a thesis of sorts when it comes to this work, and which is that women are trained for goodness and men are trained for power. Ugh. It's just like a sentence that most people wouldn't think to say, except when you hear it, you go, oh God. Yep. That's resonant. I think I want to hear you talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's really important.
Then, it is.
Yeah. And this is why, it's women, this idea of goodness, and you can talk about sort of the Old Testament and the 10 Commandments, which are very clear, right? Like, don't do these actions. And then you get into these ideas of goodness. Don't be lustful, gluttonous, envious, slothful, prideful, greedy, angry. And it's like, well, what counts, right? So, you have these women who are sort of wondering, like, where am I transgressing? And so you get into this extreme restriction of, I don't want to do anything that's perceived as remotely close to any of these. So I'm just going to repress and suppress all of these very human instincts, desires, appetites, and then project them onto other people. In our culture, a good woman is never tired. She has no wants, right? She subjugates all of her wants to other people's needs. She has no need for affirmation, attention, or praise. She is desirable, but never desiring as a sexual person. She doesn't need food, Jen, obviously. And she thinks money is bad and unspiritual, and is comfortable sort of with being reliant on other people, or just sort of being happy with what she gets. And she never gets upset, certainly, about any of it. And the other thing that's so harsh about this is that in our culture, and I think that white women in particular are so closer to sort of patriarchal power, and we feel this the most, that these aren't assigned to us the most, but I think we're the most sensitive to this. There is the worst thing for a woman is reputational harm. Just like the assigning her badness, bad mother, toxic coworker, toxic boss, unkind, says the wrong thing, that's insensitive or uncaring, done, canceled, removed. And it's impossible to sort of defend yourself against that. We have zero tolerance. And so it's very scary. Meanwhile, men, and I think power, I think I'm more concerned. I have 2 boys. I'm more concerned about what's happening to boys than I am to women. Women have learned how to sort of survive and thrive despite a world not built for us. But the men are in trouble. These wounded boys, to quote therapist Terry Real, are becoming wounding men and wreaking havoc and deaths of despair. And I mean, it's really very concerning what's happening to boys and men in this patriarchal system. But for men, like, as long as we perceive them as powerful, we revere them. And I mean, we were talking about the news, right? It's like, and I've been saying, like, if Harvey Weinstein weren't in prison, he would still be making movies. Just watch and wait, right? We don't, as long as we see people perceive these men as powerful, they can do anything. They can behave in totally callous ways.
Clearly.
And it doesn't matter. But women, don't say the wrong thing, Jen. Don't say it.
No, it's swift and it's unforgiving.
Yes.
And it is interesting to watch. Sometimes men will have a similar quick fire response to their bad behavior, but it is not as long lasting. They are granted re-access to their spaces almost across the board. I mean, it's so boring to say this, but we just really only need to look at the election this year. You can't be bad enough. You cannot be bad enough if you're a man. And clearly bad. It just doesn't matter. And because women and men will allow you to retain your power because you have it. So it's overwhelming. And I appreciate what you said about your concern for boys and men. You know, it's a little bit of an easier reach to assess the harmful effects of patriarchy on girls and women. Some of those are so overt, you know, they're so fundamentally clear. They're stacked with data. But the boys, I have 3 sons, and I remember applying this level of curiosity to the patriarchy in looking at the men in my life, same as you did. And I'm like, wait a minute, I have boys. They are tender. They cry. This isn't fitting the framework. My dad, best man I know. Like my brother, it's not working. It's not mathing. And I think about them a lot, what they are handed as a story. This is your story, particularly, at least two of my boys are white. And so their story is even more elevated, but here's your story. And this is what you live into. And it's ill-fitting. And yet, what are they supposed to do?
No, it's devastating. Yeah.
Yes. And it is devastating.
Yeah. And originally, one of the 8 thoughts was sadness, and it was dropped from the list. And so I included in the book the final chapter because I wanted to write about, like, and what about men, right? And that chapter in some ways is my favorite chapter. And it's essentially about what happens in a culture where we sever these boys from their feelings and turn them into men, which we do not need to like turn girls into women. That's not a phrase. But the way that, and the research suggests that baby boys are as deeply feeling and more attached than girls. We're still, as a culture, convinced, not all of us, certainly, but it's pervasive. This stuff is so contagious and it's reenacted regardless of what we believe. Like, I'm sure many women listening are like, I didn't subscribe to these beliefs. It's like, yeah, but they are in you, I promise. And so for these boys to be severed from connection and care and this idea, I write about the work of Carol Gilligan, he's just still working, but this psychologist who sort of was the first one to say, when we look at all these developmental models of children and young adults, like you're only looking at boys, friends, like Kohlberg and Piaget, like no girls. And so she started looking at the way that boys and girls think about morality. And this is in the 80s. She wrote this book called In a Different Voice. And she just did a new book called In a Human Voice. And I'll tell you why that's important. But what she discovered is that boys grow up seeing themselves as in the world. Girls grow up seeing themselves in service to the world. And that and this isn't a acculturation process. This is something that sort of is socialized. This isn't like a natural state as much as we're told, like, this is who you really are.
That's right. This is the nature of girls.
This is how children are then gendered by culture.
Yeah.
And then she writes chillingly that at a certain point, the word don't enters the vocabulary of these kids. And I think for boys, it's at like around 7 to 9 is the first sort of intervention. And then for girls, it's slightly older, maybe 10 to 12. And for boys, it's I don't care. And for girls, it's I don't know.
Oh, God.
Isn't that awful? And of course, girls know.
So
and of
awful.
course, boys care.
And of course, boys care.
Yes, deeply, profoundly. But that's sort of this severing. And so when we look at what's happening now, and then she wrote In a Human Voice to say, I wish that these terms weren't gendered because we all have masculine in us and feminine in us, regardless of gender. And that the masculine stage is sort of the growth and individuation. And then the feminine part is the integration and relating. And the boys sort of get stuck in this growth and individuation phase culturally. And so when I look at what's happening now in this sort of toxic masculinity and the Andrew Tates and just how intense it feels right now, and what terrifies me is to see totally reasonable men say like the cure for the crisis with boys and men is more masculinity. And the problem is that they're being feminized. And it's like, no, friends, don't blame the women. Don't blame women again, but also like they need to let their feminine up. We need a culture where the men are like, I would like to be more like women. I need to be more like women. I need to be caring. I want to be nurturing and creative. And yes, I can be strong and I can be in my masculine and I can, of course, but I also need this underdeveloped muscle. Women, I think, are very developed unilaterally. I think we all have both, are much more likely to.
Feels like, what's your sense of evolution here? I think it feels like permissions are being more frequently granted to both girls and boys to not adhere to these tropes anymore, to these paths of development. And I know, at least, of course, I'm never really sure because I lead women almost exclusively. My whole community, my whole life is women. And so we're banging this drum, but we've been banging this drum. To your earlier point, we've had to do it for centuries. I mean, forever, from the beginning of time, women have had to scrap for their own seat at the table. But Do you feel a sense of progress here? Because you spend a lot of time in the research, so you are looking both historically, but you're also looking currently. What's your sense of it as a researcher? Is it possible? I don't know if reverse this is an even fair thing to say, but is it possible that this will not be the story of humankind forever?
I think so. I mean,
Hmm.
I know you're a Richard Rohr fan. I'm a Richard Rohr stan. And I sort of go to this idea of order, disorder, reorder, and we're in a very disordered time, which feels terrifying, of course, and it's incredibly anxiety provoking. But I feel like we're gonna pull through this and at a higher level, and um so honestly, as frustrating as it is to be a woman at times, I'm not so worried about women. I think that women and girls have been outperforming boys in school for a century. We are in many ways tireless. I think what I am most concerned about with women, not I mean, there are a lot of things that are concerned. Obviously, we're watching all of our rights being stripped, but like watch out. I feel like we've been training at high altitude, boxers training up there, like watch out. And that's why I think too, if we could find a way to get behind ourselves and then each other, and we worried less about like these extremely toxically patriarchal people. There are enough wonderful men who also want something different and want a care-centered world and care about the environment, all these issues that I think that there are enough of us that we could start to rebuild this with care and love and consideration, and like, aren't we all in this together? Don't we all want the same things? I think that that's possible. Um, but I think it's gonna kick. Like the patriarchy is gonna kick like mad, and it's gonna be violent and unsettling, and deeply concerning. And I think at moments, as it already does, it'll feel like we're not making progress here.
It's
I'm
bucking right now.
optimistic. It's bucking. It is
I mean,
bucking.
I'm curious what you envision, because I'm going back to something that you said at the beginning, which was, why do women vote and behave against their own best interests, which are pretty plain? I wouldn't call that a complex partisan idea. You can look at a thing on the page and go, that's not good for women. Um, what what is going to have to be disrupted in order to create this different world that you just painted a picture of in such lovely terms, a care-centered world? The women, along with the plenty of good men out there who have the same dream for humanity, but it feels um, so discouraging to have to convince our compatriots that
To join us. I
to
know.
join us. Like,
I know.
we do.
It's tough. And I have a lot of compassion because I think that there's just so much fear. And I think it's so much of this is unconscious. And so much of what I write about in the book is like about like envy, for example. And when we deprecate someone else, that's unconscious. You're not saying like, I'm envious. She clearly has something I want. That's threatening me or triggering me or
You're
pushing
right.
me. Like
That's
it's
right.
all
It's deep
unconscious,
in the
right?
sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only when you stop and you say, wait, why am I bothered by this mom at school drop off? Like, what is this? What is happening? That you can sort of start, if you give it a minute, then you can start to actually parse it and say, oh, I understand what she's reflecting back to me. This is about me. This isn't about her. So I think for so many women who are voting against their interests, I think a number of things, and this election will be fascinating to see. It's fear, right? And I think that partly it's anxiety about the men in their lives, because I think that whether it's conscious or not, women recognize like the men are not okay. So I think that there's one, trying to secure your own safety and security, right? Like, so this feels like the safe bet. And I think it's like, yes, we can sort of trash these women and be mad at them, but I'm like, I understand that they think that they're doing the right thing for their family, and we haven't done a good job, unfortunately, of saying like, we're building something over here that's equally compelling, equally safe, equally secure, in fact, more secure, because we're going to work on the environment and we're going to sort of help these systems, to say like, all right, we can hold you. I think that's sort of a failure of our failure to sort of paint a picture of like, this is going to be better. For some reason, they don't believe us. But
well, we've also injected into the conversation so much judgment and shame around it and fury, righteous or not. And so it isn't necessarily a safe conversation for anyone to have. And it's not been a safe place. I mean, I I have an interesting perspective as somebody who was deeply embedded in a much more sort of conservative, um, patriarchal, conventional space, kind of strung up with religion. And so having been fairly cannibalized by my own community over there for departing from the script, thinking, well, God, I won't miss you. This is the meanest den of lions I've ever been in. And sort of then had a bit of a pendulum swing over to a much more like progressive space, or whatever you want to call the words, and realized, oh, some real similar behaviors. It is the instinct to chew one another up for getting something wrong, for stepping wrong, for using the wrong word, for or even just a departure of thought is really not different. It really isn't. And so I think there's a lot of blame to be shared, between a lack of safety around productive and meaningful conversations that can still be connected and hopeful, and there's room to grow, and there's room to listen. And I'm searching for that place. I don't know if I found it. Do you know where it is?
No, but I relate
Yeah.
deeply, you know, as a fellow white woman, to be like, oh wow, there's kind of nothing that's worse at this moment. Like, there's so much contempt. You get contempt for sort of the feminine from like the super masculine patriarchy, right? Like, nothing but disdain. There's nothing that they would want to be less like, you know, than a woman. And then on, you know, in the progressive quarters, it's like there's this idea that you're suspect, or that you need to be apologizing, or that you're going to get it wrong, or that you're, by speaking, you know, there's so many stories right now. Like, we've really tied ourselves in a knot, in a way that's not particularly productive. And I think also becomes this like, creates a dark cover for a lot of misogyny, where you can sort of dunk on women still, in a way that's quite wild. We do it to each other. Again, like, I'm like, let's just understand like all the contempt that we're carrying, and can we bring it out and air it out, and yeah, create something where it's like, I'm going to believe that everything you're doing makes sense for you, and that you're guided by something. So I want to understand what that is. What's the fear? What's happening in your body? Where do you feel attacked? Where do you feel like you're going to lose approval, safety, security, control? You know, like, let's talk about it and try to understand each other, so that we can, one, calm each other down, but also, I think, start to create a space in the middle where most of us are like, we might have slightly different views, but there are so many. I don't know if you've ever interviewed Loretta Ross. She's sort of calling in rather than calling out. And she's amazing. She's a Smith College professor. But she talks about like, her parents are Republicans, or were, I think they've died. She's older, but she's like, I have the shared values, I believe, of like 90% of Americans. We can probably agree on almost everything. She's like, I can't probably get like, I can't bring myself to care about the people who storm the Capitol or to like spend my energy trying to get them on board, but pretty much anyone else is worth our energy. And isn't it lovely? Yeah, like stop treating each other as expendable, or like if there's not a Venn diagram, like we can't agree on most things, you know?
Right. I always find the talking points, they fall apart quite a bit down on the ground. Because it's an easier reach to just tropes are easy, and fury is actually easy from a distance. But most of this unravels a little bit in real life. I have beloved people in my life for whom we are absolutely ideological opposites, and I love them and they love me. I'm just saying real life is a lot more nuanced than the noisy story of it all. I want to ask you, as I start to wrap it up here with you, but you were just going to start with envy, then you ended up actually with 8. So you really expanded your vision from where you thought it was going to be centered. Was there a particular deadly sin that was the most, I don't know, surprising to you or interesting to you, or however you want to fill in the blank there?
Yeah.
Unexpected, maybe.
Well, what's interesting about it is that I was like, oh, this is a punch card. This will be fun. And some of these I like don't really think I have. And that's been the experience of a lot of readers who are like, yeah, I have my food stuff, but like, I'm really good about money or whatever it is. And then originally I had sort of pitched it as a clinical therapist. I'm going to diagnose the culture and tell everyone, do the research and tell everyone what's up. And then my editor was like, you have to write yourself into this and relate to each of these. And I was like, oh my God, are you kidding? And that was way hardcore therapy, Jen. I mean, some of those chapters were hardcore. And what I found being with the book, and obviously I've been living with it for longer than it's been out, but that it's an onion for me, where I think I've resolved my sloth, which is like, I'm a, one of those virtuous workaholics. And, that's my antidote to anxiety, is just make myself really busy. And so every time I think I'm on top of any one of them, I've resolved my issues with money, I'm like, put back in it. Or that's been my experience, where I'm like, oh, here I am saying like, I don't really care about money. And I don't know. And, my therapist is like, really? Because I think like the money is center to like every single thing that you do. So differ.
Therapists are so mean. Oh, they're so rude. What do they think we're paying them for? Not to be that mean to us all the time.
So rude.
Yeah.
So, and some of them are so present, gluttony was so, and so it wrote itself because we still live in an incredibly fat phobic culture. And so some of them are so present, and others, like anger, was very difficult to write because I had to like acknowledge that I'm angry, and I higher mind my anger. And it's only now that I'm able to be like, oh my God, I'm furious. But it's
so real. I mean, you're so saying real. And I'm like, oh God, like, I know, right? I would not want to hold that mirror up to myself for 8 chapters. I'll tell you that right now.
5% of your anger, if I had to guess.
The anger bit is so funny. I am in a loop right now on a current writing project where I keep telling myself, I swear to God, I keep telling myself, you need to be less angry. That's my loop right now. Like, can you write this in a way that's more gentle? Can you write this in a way that is more can you do a cell phone a little bit more than you're doing here? It's just
I'm getting full body chills as you say this because yes, I mean, the amount of processing that women do to make their anger more palatable.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You and I were talking before we started recording about, I'm writing with your brother's partner's imprint there. And so literally I have said, I need this. I just need this to not ruffle too much. I need to not ruffle too many feathers. It just needs to, can it land with a light touch? I've said that. I've said that. And, of course, a good editor, they're just like, you will not do that. Write a good book or don't write one. That's really the instruction. Like, write it true or don't write it. Don't waste our time. I'm like, oh God. It's just, this is deep. This is in our bones. We were born into this. This is the air piped into every room. Like, it takes so much self-examination to do this work and curiosity about our own patterns, our own thoughts. Because to your earlier point, it is, I have done it and I think I still do it, which is like, I was just kind of born like this, or this is, but so much of this is conditioned. It's just conditioned. We were told to think these thoughts.
Yeah.
So we do.
And just a quick note on anger and women, you think about, you go back to this model of like women being composed and never really being ruffled or full of rage, that's sort of naturally who we are. But girls and boys have the same amount of aggression. It's not like girl babies are like, oh, oops, I lost my pacifier. May I please have my pacifier? Right. And then as children, for boys are allowed to push and yell and shove, and boys will be boys, and girls age 2, 3 modeled for them. Girls don't do that. And so it becomes covert for us. Alliance building, whisper networks, backstabbing, because we have to get the aggression out. Then we're told like, that's just who women are, Meanwhile, we have all this anger and aggression because then as we grow up, we're like, we can't do that. We can't, that's bad. That's not a good thing to do. And so we suppress it. We just stuff it in our bodies and it makes us depressed and it makes us physically ill.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's exactly true. It's such a wonderful idea to think about raising kids in a different way, without the messages, without the narratives that they get really, really early. I mean, this does not start in middle school. It starts so early. And where would we be? I don't know. I like the vision. And I think I'm with you in that I'm a hardcore self-assessor. I'll take the blame if I can. But it does, your work invites us to be curious about ourselves, to be curious about the thoughts we're having, the thoughts we're thinking, the words we're saying, the feelings we're burying. I love it. It's good work.
It is. And it's relieving because all I wanted to do was like show the matrix and put all of these ideas. There's so many amazing books about women and food and women and anger and women and work. And nobody was really talking to each other, but to say, this is a system. This is what it is. This is how to find it in yourself. This is how to start to interrupt it. This is collective work. We can't do this alone. And I wanted to sort of also process it enough for people so that they wouldn't leave like completely unmoored. But that's like, okay, we know this is it. We see it. Let's get to work. Women know how to work.
Oh God, do we? Do we? You're talking to an Enneagram 3. Say less. That's where I get my value. What are you talking about? Love me. I work hard.
Do you wing too?
Yes, of course.
Of
And I don't
course.
know if that's
Or the
real
Love
or
Podcast. Yeah.
I mean, that's either actually true or, women are supposed to be twos, especially Christian women. So I certainly, I certainly love that persona. I certainly love the idea of being a selfless helper. But it's interesting, the older I get, and maybe just the more self-aware I get, I'm like, oh, I got a little bit of precious four in me. Like the misunderstood, emotional, nobody gets me, deep feelings, playlist girl. I got some of that. So who knows? Who knows?
I love that
Um,
system. It's so fun.
Oh, it's so helpful. It's so helpful. It helps me understand myself and it helps me understand people that I love too. Because I just figured my way was the right way and everybody else just had some problems. What's wrong with them? This is so good. I literally want to talk to you for 5 hours. I have a million other questions. I have a million other things I want to hear you talk about. Um, the good news is you have put these thoughts into a book, and it feels people can get that book anywhere that they get books, and they should. And have you been like, I don't know if I don't know if it's delighted, but has it been powerful to now experience 1 year of conversations that your book has inspired as they come back to you, as women just start going, yes, yes, this is what it's
Yeah.
amazing to
It's
put words like
amazing.
this in the hands of
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's been incredibly affirming and to watch it have a life of its own. And as you know, so many books launch and then die, or that it's like, who cares? And so it's been really like, and I knew the book. I mean, this is my woo-woo self, but I felt like I kind of channeled the book and that it's like not mine. I mean, it is, but it's kind of not, and that it's going to have its own life. Um, and that's what I wanted. It's like, it's my baby, but it's not really mine. It's more like, here's a cultural artifact. And yes, to your earlier point, I hope that it's one of those books that, in 40 years, girls are like, oh, now I understand the psychology of my grandmother. Like, what a funny
Totally.
thing, you know?
I found it in this obsolete book in her dusty library.
God, I can't relate, but it does explain something about my mother.
Yeah, that's already happening some. My oldest daughter's 20, she's about to turn 24, and she is just different. Like all of them, their friends are. They are not having a lot of the stuff that we just ate with our morning breakfast. Like we just put it right on the plate and digested it. And they're like, I think not. And I'm like, oh my God, same. But like, I didn't know that we could say that when we were in our 20s. So I'm hopeful. I'm watching them. I'm like, you guys, you're doing all right. Like, more than I knew at your age. Like, it's very interesting to watch the next generation like come of age. Some of this work is working, is my point. These conversations that you're like slogging around in and having to like talk about your own interior life and this vulnerable thing. I'm just saying that it's landing. Those messages are mattering and they have entered the zeitgeist and people are listening, and change is slow, but I see it. I see it happening. And so well done adding your voice to the collective here. Like posturing for a better world. I mean, I know that's ambitious. Posturing for a better world, that's all we're doing here. But what are we else? That's it. That's what we're doing. Yeah.
Well, and I think if we can build it, I think we can bring more people to it. And I think it's too much to expect people to say, oh yeah, I'm entirely dependent on this patriarchal system. So let me just burn my bra, whatever it is. Like, I'm with you. I mean, sure, I would love that, but I think it's too much to expect. And I think we have to have a little bit of a little more compassion.
Yeah, I do too. And I love that. That's the lesser known partner in this work becoming effective. Do we want to just always be right, or do we want to be effective?
Do we
Right?
want to build a better world?
Do
I
we
don't
want to
care
build a
who's
better
right.
world? That's right.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
right. Okay. I just feel like I'm going to need you to come back on. I'd like to have a part 2 of this conversation. And thank you for all that you do in the world. And I really am proud of you. I don't know if that sounds right, but I am. And really proud of you, and proud to be sort of laboring on behalf of not just women and girls, but also boys and men at this time with you. This is our note in the song. And so it's ours to play. And will you just tell folks where to find you, where to follow you, where to all of that?
Yeah. So the book is On Our Best Behavior, The 7 Deadly Sins and the Price Women Pay to Be Good. And my podcast is called Pulling the Thread, and I have a Substack of the same name. And then I'm on Instagram at Elise Loehnen.
Yeah, that's it. And for people who are like, I don't know how to spell that, I'm going to put it out for you, everybody. Don't worry. I will link to everything. You don't have to phonetically figure out Loehnen. Okay.
Thank you. That's a service. I wish I had an easier name.
I know. Except my kids would beg to differ. They're like, the way that they hate the last name Hatmaker is so complete. It is. They all threatened to change their last name permanently and like legally by the time they turned 18. But anyway, thanks for being on today. I really am so glad you were here.
Thank you.
You guys, thank you for spending this hour with us. Every time I listen back to Elise, I hear something new. Every time. Like a new little thread that I could maybe decide to tug on in my own life. So if this conversation stirred anything for you, you are definitely not alone. You can find everything we talked about today at jenhatmaker.com under the podcast tab. Elise, her socials, her book, everything. Her Substack, so that you can keep learning from her. And if you're new here, make sure you're like following the show. Just subscribe to it wherever you listen to your podcast. That's about a 5-second task. Just hit follow or plus or add, and that's it. It just shows up in your library every single week. For a little bonus extra, come hang out with me on Substack. We have a bonus segment out of the podcast called Just One More Thing. And it drops over on Substack after every single episode, where I do a teeny little bonus moment with my guest that week. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for thinking with me. Thank you for being an incredible part of this community. I'll see you next week.